SLT Mobitel, the connection.
ලෙන්ගතුකම වැඩි කරගන්න ලව්ජු රුපියල් 50ට අඩු කළා.
මාමේ එන්න අපිට එකක් බොමු.
Tonight, COVID or not, epidemiology chief says it is high time to reopen schools.
We'll be able to resume the education of our children and continue uninterruptedly whether COVID-19 in Sri Lanka or not.
Third in 6 days, another Ukrainian flight touches down in Sri Lanka with more tourists on board. What motives? Rock quarry explosives thieves arrested. It's doable. Sri Lanka Medical Association stands in favour of burying COVID-19 dead. All that and much more coming up on First at 9. This Saturday, the 2nd of January, 2021.
Nava sunlight sakura. Then Dikukal pavathina sakura mal suandin.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhammik Ekanai. Let's start with your local stories. Now, Chief Epidemiologist Dr. Sudat Samaravira insists that schools should soon resume their work without further hampering the already interrupted education process. He's optimistic that the plans put in place by the Ministry of Education will aid the resumption of schools and their uninterrupted activities even amid the pandemic.
After a COVID-induced hiatus, all government schools outside the Western Province and isolated areas reopened on the 23rd of November last year and was limited to grades 6 to 13. The government faced backlash from teachers' unions over the schools reopening as they called for a more systematic plan for the process, urging the authorities to push the reopening of schools until this year. Speaking on the very topic, Chief Epidemiologist Dr. Sudat Samaravira says that schools should resume this year as there have been enough interruptions to education owing to the pandemic.
We know because of the COVID-19 epidemic during 2020, our school education has got a very big blow and a very big setback because most of the time the schools are closed. The students were studying online, but it is not equal in all the areas because in some areas there is no internet access, no necessary mobile devices to get the necessary educational contents. Because of that, in this year 2021, somehow we have to start the schools again and resume children's education properly. For that, the Ministry of Education now planning to carry out all the things to make the school safe environment free of COVID-19. The Ministry of Education will start meeting all the parents and the staff and they will discuss how to manage the classes, how to prevent that introduction of COVID-19 into schools. If there are symptomatic even among the children or staff, what to do and how to face such situations in order to prevent any COVID-19 outbreaks in schools. So with all these plannings, we hope that in this year, in coming days, we will be able to resume the education of our children again and will be able to continue uninterruptedly whether COVID-19 in Sri Lanka or not. Similarly, we know that tuition classes is one of the essential components in our children's education. So because of that, resuming of tuition classes also a need. Ministry of Education with the professionals of this tuition masters held discussions to identify how to resume these tuition classes, preventing COVID-19 outbreaks. So we hope that with the beginning of new school terms in this year, the tuition classes also will be able to resume with some restrictions.
Safeguard hand sanitizer. Navatama nishpadana pela neerogimat diviyakata.
Sri Lanka welcomed its third batch of tourists to the island today at the Mattala Rajapaksa International Airport, 3 days after its second batch. The Director of Airport and Aviation Services assures that all the tourists arriving in the country are paying tourists who have opted for relevant tour packages and are not given free of charge stays as speculated in some quarters.
Under Sri Lanka's pilot project to recommence tourism in the country in a travel bubble, the third batch of tourists arrived in the country today. On board the SkyUp Airlines flight PQ555 were 133 Ukrainian nationals who arrived at the Mattala Rajapaksa International Airport at 2 p.m. today. Meanwhile, a group of 22 Ukrainians from among the first batch to arrive in the island began their first tour by visiting the Mirissa beach in Mathura today. Keeping in line with the travel bubble restrictions, the Mirissa Fisheries Harbour was also temporarily closed for the public in order to facilitate the entry of tourists within the premises. In the meantime, Minister of Tourism Prasanna Ranatunga touched on the plans of the government with regards to the resumption of tourism in the country.
රටේ ලොකු අර්බුදයක් තියෙනවා. ඒ වගේම මේ සංචාරක ශේෂ්ත්‍රයෙන් යැපෙන අය අද පාරවල් වල වාහන තියාගෙන යම් යම් අතිරේක ආදායම් මාර්ග කරගෙන යනවා. ඒ නිසා ලෝකෙම කොවිඩ් එකත් එක්ක මේක රටවල් ඇරලා තියෙනවා. ඉතින් අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ මේක ජනවාරි මාසෙ අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම අපි සංචාරකයන්ට රට විවෘත කරන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා.
In the meantime, Director of the Airport and Aviation Services, Shehan Sumanasekaram, said that the Ukrainian nationals who arrive in the country undergo PCR tests before leaving the country and are subjected to undergo the health and safety guidelines after arriving in the country. He also emphasized on the fact that the Ukrainian tourists arriving have opted for specific tour packages and are paying for their stay in the island, contrary to the rumors that they are not.
Now, the Sri Lanka Medical Association is of the view that burying COVID-19 deceased could be permitted based on current evidence. In a statement which cited a number of factors in support of their stance, the SLMA says that the virus requires living cells to thrive in, and as such, it is unlikely that the virus could remain infectious within the dead body for a significant time. It added that no similar infections have been reported in older viruses that have been further studied, such as the influenza virus and SARS-CoV-1.
The issue of cremations of Muslim COVID-19 deceased has been a hotly contested topic in recent weeks, with members of the Muslim community and civil society groups protesting the Health Ministry's continued insistence on cremations as the best possible method of handling remains. With that, yesterday the Sri Lanka Medical Association too weighed in on the burials versus cremation argument, saying that in view of these considerations, it decided to review the situation as a matter of urgency, taking into account new scientific knowledge available regarding the COVID-19 virus. In a statement released yesterday, the SLMA revealed that after extensive deliberations at a meeting of medical experts held on the 31st of December, the following observations had been agreed upon. The SLMA concludes that COVID-19 infection occurs only through respiratory routes and no infections have been reported through any other routes, including the gastrointestinal portal. Further, it adds that with the virus only able to thrive inside living cells, it is unlikely that the virus could remain infectious within a dead body for any significant period of time. It also says that a positive post-mortem PCR test does not necessarily mean that a dead body could be infectious. Further, it warns that the larger threat remains in the contamination of the water supply with sewage that consists of excretions and secretions of COVID-19 infected patients. The SLMA says that this issue could be much worse than any possible contamination from buried corpses. In addition, the SLMA says that although there have been instances where viral particles have been isolated in groundwater, there have not been any reports of these particles being infective. It also added that there have not been any records of such infections, even with older viruses like influenza and SARS-CoV-1, which have been studied in much greater detail. Further, the association clarified that the reported planned exhumation and cremation of large numbers of culled minks in Denmark was not due to any possible contamination of water resources by the virus. Instead, it explained that the planned cremation was to prevent nitrogenous waste from the decomposing mink carcasses, contaminating the nearby water sources and polluting the environment. The association also added that even in the case of severe waterborne diseases like cholera, burial of corpses is one of the methods of disposal of infected remains. In conclusion, the SLMA says that based on these observations and relying on currently available scientific information, the Council is of the view that burial of COVID-19 remains could be permitted in Sri Lanka.
In the meantime, the sale, distribution and storage of all hand sanitizers are not registered with the National Medicines Regulatory Authority is banned. Or are banned, I should say. The relevant Gazette notification, which was issued last evening, also makes the clear display of the registration number of the product mandatory. On the COVID-19 front, another batch of over 500 patients were given the all clear to leave hospital today, giving a further boost to Sri Lanka's virus recovery numbers.
Sri Lanka confirmed 502 fresh COVID-19 cases so far today, with 83 of them attributed to the prisons cluster, while the remaining being identified as close contacts of the Paliagoda cluster. Meanwhile, yesterday, the daily case number was 557. The Colombo and Gampar districts recorded a majority of the cases, with 192 and 127 infections respectively. 61 cases were confirmed from the Kalutara district, 38 from Galle, while 29 cases were confirmed from Ratnapura. A further 108 infections were recorded across 13 districts. There were also 2 overseas returnees among yesterday's caseload. In the meantime, the random rapid antigen tests conducted on persons leaving the Western province yielded 5 positive results yesterday. The Health Promotion Bureau says that a total of 14,600 PCR tests were also conducted across the island yesterday. In the meantime, Sri Lanka's COVID-19 recoveries rose by 562 today, taking the overall tally to 36,717. With that, the country's total number of active coronavirus cases dipped to 7,433. Meanwhile, 3 COVID-19 related deaths have been confirmed today so far, and that puts the island's death toll at 211. In other developments, an extraordinary gazette was released yesterday by the chairman of the Consumer Affairs Authority, banning the sale, manufacturing, importation, storage and distribution of hand sanitizers not registered with the National Medicines Regulatory Authority. It also stated that the registration number must be displayed conspicuously on the packaging or the container of the hand sanitizer.
The printing process of driver's licenses previously conducted by the Department of Motor Traffic was taken over by the Sri Lanka Army yesterday. Addressing the gathering, Subject Minister Gamini Lokuge stated that the move will save the government up to 80 million rupees. In order to carry out the activities of this project, an Army Information Technology Solutions Centre was also set up at the department premises.
After the rise in allegations of inefficiency and misconduct in the process of issuing driving licenses in the country, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa made an unannounced visit to the Department of Motor Traffic and instructed that the matter be looked into and resolved. As another step in this direction, the Cabinet gave consent to hand over the printing of driving licenses to the Sri Lanka Army. The process commenced yesterday at the premises of the Department of Motor Traffic in Verahara. The inauguration event was presided over by the Minister of Transport Gamini Lokuge, State Minister Dilum Amunugama and Army Commander General Shavendra Silva. An Army Information Technology Solutions Centre was also set up at the department premises to carry out this project, and the establishment was inspected by the subject minister. Making the move official, the Army Commander and the Commissioner General of the Department of Motor Traffic signed a Memorandum of Understanding. The Army Commander's driving license was printed as the first copy of the project.
යුද හමුදාව එක තාක්ෂණ අංශයෙන් තමයි සහභාගී වෙන්නේ මෝටර රථ දෙපාර්තමේන්තුවේ යම් කිසි කොටසක් ඔවුන් විසිනුත් අපි දෙගොල්ලෝ එකතු වෙලා තමයි මේක සහයෝගයෙන් කරගෙන යන්න උත්සාහ කරන්නේ මේකේ තාක්ෂණික කොටස පහුගිය කාල තුල විදේශීය සහ ශ්‍රී ලාංකික සමාගමක් ඒකාබද්ධව යම් කාල සීමාවකදී ටෙන්ඩර් එකක් මගින් ලබාගෙන අවුරුදු 7කට අවුරුදු 7 කාල සීමාව ඉවර වුණාට පසුව ඒ කාලවල සිටි කවුරු හෝ ඇමතිවරු හෝ කවුරු හෝ අතින් අවුරුදු 11ක් දක්වා දිගු ලබමින් තමයි ගිහිලා තිබුණේ. මටත් මේක එක සැරේ නවත්තන්න බැරි නිසා මටත් අකමැත්තෙන් මාස 6ක් මේක එක්ස්ටෙන්ඩ් කරන්න උනා. මේ පෞද්ගලික සමාගමේ කටයුතු වල කිසිම වරදක් නැහැ. සමාගමේ අඩුපාඩුවක් තිබුණා නම් තියෙන්නේ නිවැරදිව ගිවිසුම් ගත නොවි. ඒ අනුව අපි සාකච්ඡා කරලා තීන්දුව ගත්තා. උදල් පිටට යෑම වැළැක්වෙනවා මේ හරහා.
රජයට අවුරුද්දකට මිලියන 80ක විතර ඉතිරියක් මේ තුලින් අපිට ලබා ගන්න පුළුවන්කම ඇති වෙලා තියෙනවා. මේ ඩ්‍රයිවිං ලයිසන් එකට දාන චිප් එක පොලිසියට පරීක්ෂා කරන්න යන්ත්‍ර නැහැ. එහෙනම් ඒ පොලිසියටත් මේක ආවම යම් කිසි බලපත්‍රයක් ගත්තාම ඒක නැවත කියවන්න පුළුවන් වැඩපිළිවෙල අනාගතේ අපි ඇති කරන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා.
We will see you once more on the other side of this break. See you soon.
Ceylon Bank, the bank with a heart.
Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, the stock of explosives reported stolen from a rock quarry in Maunala last month has been recovered by the Criminal Investigation Department from Peradeniya. 4 suspects have been arrested, including the mastermind of the theft, identified as a worker at the Maunala quarry, and 3 others who were revealed to be quarry operators who he had planned to sell the explosives to. The police say that investigators have ruled out any links to extremist and terrorist groups.
A rock quarry owner in Mavanala last month reported the theft of a stock of blasting agents to the police. The stock of explosives consisting of 15 kilograms of ammonium nitrate, 5 water gel pellets, 20 detonators, 35 meters of detonator cord and 170 ampere battery had reportedly been stolen from the quarry, prompting a multi-pronged investigation involving the police, the CID and intelligence agencies. After over a week of investigations, the Criminal Investigation Department finally tracked down the missing explosives in Peradeniya. Investigators also arrested 4 suspects during the raid at several locations. Following the arrest, police media spokesperson DIG Ajit Rohana revealed that the suspects had no links to any extremist groups and had instead sought to sell the explosives to other quarries.
පසුගිය දෙසැම්බර් මාසේ 22 වෙනිදා රාත්‍රී මාවනැල්ල පොලිස් වසමේ හිඟුල්ල මොල්ලිගොඩ ප්‍රදේශයේ ගල් කොරියක් පවත්වාගෙන යන ස්ථානයක තිබූ ගබඩාවක් කඩලා ඇමෝනියම් නයිට්‍රේට් පුපුරණ ද්‍රව්‍ය කිලෝග්‍රෑම් 15ක් එම සේවා නූල් 30ක් ඩෙටනේටර් 20ක් බීම් 5ක් ඇතුළු විවිධ ද්‍රව්‍ය සොරාගෙන ගොස් තිබුණා. මෙම විමර්ශනය සාර්ථකව නිම කරපු අපරාධ පරීක්ෂණ දෙපාර්තමේන්තුව අද දිනේදී මේ සිද්ධියට අදාළව සැකකරුවන් තිදෙනෙක් අත්අඩංගුවට ගෙන තිබෙනවා. ඒ වගේම මුලින්ම අත්අඩංගුවට ගත්ත මාවනැල්ල පොලිසිය මගින් එහි සේවකයෙක් ඔහු දැන් රිමාන්ඩ් භාරයේ සිටින්නේ. නමුත් ඔහුගේ ඍජු සබඳතාවයක් මේ සිද්ධියට තිබෙන බවට අනාවරණය වී තිබෙනවා. පේරාදෙණිය ප්‍රදේශයේ තලවත්ත ප්‍රදේශයේ තිබී මේ සොරා ගන්නා ලද සියලුම පුපුරණ ද්‍රව්‍ය ඒ වගේම එම ගල් කොරියෙන් සොරා ගන්නා ලද ද්‍රව්‍ය සොයාගෙන තිබෙනවා. ඇමෝනියම් නයිට්‍රේට්, ඒ වගේම වෝටර් ජෙල්, සේවා නූල්, ඩෙටනේටර්ස්, බීම් මේ සියල්ල සාර්ථක ලෙස විමර්ශනයක් සිදු කර පේරාදෙණිය ප්‍රදේශයෙන් සොයාගෙන තිබෙනවා. ඒ වගේම මේ සිද්ධියට කිසිම ආකාරයක අන්තවාදී හෝ ත්‍රස්තවාදී ක්‍රියාවල එහෙම නැත්නම් එවැනි සංවිධානවල කිසිම සබඳතාවයක් නොමැති බවට අනාවරණය වී තිබෙනවා. මෙය වෙනත් ගල් කොරි නැත්නම් ගල් වැඩපොළ පවත්වාගෙන යන අයට තමයි අලෙවි කර තිබෙන්නේ. සිද්ධිය සම්බන්ධයෙන් මුලින්ම අත්අඩංගුවට ගනු ලැබූ සැකකරු පේරාදෙණිය ප්‍රදේශයේ පදිංචි සරත් බණ්ඩාර නැමැති අයෙක් ඔහු දැනට රක්ෂිත බන්ධනාගාර ගත කර තිබෙනවා. ඒ වගේම අද දිනේදී තවත් සැකකරුවන් 3 දෙනෙක් අත්අඩංගුවට ගත්තා. පිළිමතලාව ගණේගොඩ ප්‍රදේශයේ පදිංචි සුගත් ගිම්හාන නැමැති වයස අවුරුදු 21ක පුද්ගලයෙක්, පේරාදෙණිය බෝයගම ප්‍රදේශයේ පදිංචි සුගත් වීරසිංහ නැමැති 36 හැවිරිදි පුද්ගලයෙක්, ඒ වගේම පේරාදෙණිය තලවත්ත පාර ප්‍රදේශයේ පදිංචි තුෂාන් පින්නගොල්ල නැමැති 49 හැවිරිදි පුද්ගලයෙක්. සරත් බණ්ඩාර විසින් මෙම පුපුරණ ද්‍රව්‍ය සහ අනිකුත් මෙවලන් සොරකම් කිරීමෙන් පසුව අදාළ පුද්ගලයන් තිදෙනා වෙත ලබා දී තිබෙනවා. ඔවුන් යම් ආකාරයකට මෙම ගල් වැඩපොළ නැත්නම් ගල් කොරි කර්මාන්තයේ නිරත වන අයවලුන් බවයි වාර්තා වෙන්නේ.
Moving on with other local stories, residents of the village of Panama in the Ampara district vented their frustrations on the local wildlife office in the area after a couple of leopard attacks in less than a week. They resulted in the death of one farmer and injuries to another. The police have arrested 5 suspects for the damage caused to the wildlife office, while military personnel are to be deployed to provide security to the village.
Residents of the Panama village, which borders the Kumana National Park, have damaged the wildlife office in the area after 2 leopard attacks that resulted in the death of one and serious injuries to another. The first attack had taken place on the 30th of December, 14 kilometers inside the Kumana Park, where one person died of his injuries. The victim was one of 2 Panama residents who had been travelling to farm their rice fields in the Helava area located within the park. The residents of the village say that the leopard has been sighted within the village often. Meanwhile, another group was attacked by the leopard last evening in the same area, causing serious injuries to one person. The victim is currently being treated at the Potuvil Base Hospital for severe bite injuries to his neck area. Following the attack, outraged Panama residents attacked the Panama Wildlife Office last night.
වනජීවි කාර්යාලයේ ජනේල 7කට දැඩි අලාභ සිදු වී ඇති බවට වාර්තා වෙනවා. ඒ වගේම තවත් අලාභ රාශියක් සිදු වී ඇති බවට වාර්තා වෙනවා. පානම පොලිසිය විසින් මේ සම්බන්ධයෙන් විමර්ශනයක් සිදු කර පුද්ගලයන් 5 දෙනෙක් අත්අඩංගුවට ගෙන තිබෙනවා. යතුරු පැදි 2ක්, ත්‍රිරෝද රථයක් සහ පා පැදියක් පොලිස් භාරයට ගෙන තිබෙනවා. මේ අත්අඩංගුවට ගත් සැකකරුවන් අද දින පොතුවිල් අධිකරණය වෙත ඉදිරිපත් කිරීමට නියමිතයි. දැනට පානම ප්‍රදේශයේ එම තත්ත්වය පාලනය කර ඇති බවටයි වාර්තා වෙන්නේ.
Meanwhile, a decision has been taken to provide military security for the Panama villagers following discussions held at the Sengamu army camp.
Now, the Gulface Urban Forest Park and Berry Lake Open Restaurant, built by the Sri Lanka Land Development Corporation with the contribution from the Urban Development Authority, was opened for the public earlier this week by State Minister Dr. Nalaka Godeheva. The Urban Development Authority will continue to construct urban development parks under this concept in each town of the country. Currently, the construction process for another urban forest park like this is currently underway in Kurunegala. The Gulface Urban Park is notably the biggest urban forest park at the moment. The project was also completed within a short period of 6 months. We'll see you shortly. Stay with us. Now, 2020 ended up being a remarkably strong year for markets after the initial fright in March when coronavirus started to spread. For those investors who stayed the course from the beginning of the year, there were double-digit gains from US and global equities and solid returns from bond markets. The US benchmark S&P 500 index had an annual gain of more than 16%, while the MSCI World Index was up just over 14%. Meanwhile, the Bloomberg Barclays Global Bond Index was showing total returns for the year of about 9%. Buoyant equity prices and valuations reflect a bullish outlook for profits and economic growth in 2021 on the back of a vaccine-powered rebound. Now, residents in Wuhan have welcomed the World Health Organization's upcoming visit to investigate the city, which is the alleged epicenter of the coronavirus pandemic. Beijing strongly opposed calls for any international inquiry into the origins of the virus, but expressed willingness to an investigation led by the World Health governing body. The United Kingdom, meanwhile, is to allow shots of different COVID-19 vaccines to be given to people on rare occasions, despite a lack of evidence about the extent of immunity offered by mixing doses.
Government plans to allow people to be given shots of different coronavirus vaccines on rare occasions. The move comes despite a lack of evidence about the extent of immunity offered by mixing coronavirus vaccines. The government has said that people could be given a mix and match of 2 COVID-19 shots if, for example, the same vaccine dose was out of stock. In the meantime, citizens of Wuhan in China yesterday welcomed the World Health Organization's upcoming visit to investigate the alleged epicenter of the coronavirus pandemic, which has infected more than 84 million people around the world. According to the WHO, an international team of investigators is expected to travel to China this month. A team of 12 to 15 international experts are set to visit Wuhan to examine evidence including human and animal samples collected by Chinese researchers and to build on their initial studies. Beijing has strongly opposed calls for an international inquiry into the origins of the coronavirus, but said it has been open to a WHO-led investigation. The residents of Wuhan welcomed the visit, saying that they hope the visit would help clarify the origins of the deadly disease. India, in the meantime, has approved the COVID-19 vaccine developed by AstraZeneca and Oxford University, paving the way for a huge immunization campaign in the world's second most populous country. It is the first COVID-19 vaccine to be approved for emergency use by India, which has the highest number of infections after the United States. India has reported more than 10 million COVID-19 cases, though its rate of infections has come down significantly after a mid-September peak. The country hopes to inoculate 300 million of its 1.35 billion people in the first 6 to 8 months of this year.
Now, a second body has been found in the search for the missing following a massive landslide that destroyed homes in Norway. 8 people remain missing following the hillside collapse that sent mud into the village of Ask on Wednesday. Now, the landslide struck a residential area about 30 kilometers north of capital Oslo. Police said some 700 people had been evacuated from the area. TV footage of the site showed a large crater with destroyed buildings at the bottom of it. Rescue workers continued to search the area, and children and adults who were feared to have been caught in mud and debris. Now, Sri Lanka cricket captain Dimuth Karunaratne is confident that the team will be competitive with a side of youngsters set to feature in tomorrow's test against South Africa. Sri Lanka has a long list of injuries comprising of senior players. In any case, Karunaratne is optimistic about the outcome of the next test match.
The Sri Lankan team is faced with an injury crisis ahead of tomorrow's second test match with South Africa in Johannesburg. 5 players in total are on the treatment table. What's more, Sri Lanka's most experienced pacer Suranga Lakmal too had failed a fitness test yesterday. Half-centurion from the first test Dhananjay De Silva is out of the series, with the doctors ordering him a 2-week rest. Meanwhile, the participation of Lahiru Kumara, Dinesh Chandimal and Kasun Rajitha in tomorrow's test is uncertain owing to the injuries they sustained during the first test. Participation of Wanindu Hasaranga, who also suffered an injury in the previous test, is also hanging in the balance.
The injuries, particularly the Silva and Lakmal, how big a factor are they going to be for you in the second test? Do you feel that you still have a good opportunity to get some sort of result in this test?
I think we have a young side. We've got 22 players. The bench is very strong, so I think we have a competitive side to compete with the South African team.
Could you just please run through who is definitely not available for the second test?
Dhananjay is not available. Lahiru Kumara, Kasun Rajitha and Dinesh Chandimal is not available for the selection. Wanindu and Suranga, we have a fitness test today. So hopefully they will pass the fitness test. If not, there will be a couple of chance to youngsters.
Will you just summarize what you think your chances are in this test match and how will you be approaching it?
We don't have the best 11, but I have good youngsters. They all done well in domestic. I feel the youngsters will do the best because if you take the last series, we don't have senior players like Chandimal, Angelo. We done without them. So I still believe we can do it.
In the meantime, the England Test team is due to arrive in the island tomorrow for a 2-test series to be played under the World Test Championship. The series will be worked off without spectators and will get underway on the 14th, with the second test scheduled to start on the 22nd.
And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.